Hello everybody, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. Welcome back. In today's video, there are two fish that are called Rummy Nose. You have the Rummy Nose Rasbora and you have the Rummy Nose Tetra. Both of them are cool, but I think one is a much better choice than the other. In today's video, we're going to talk about why. Thanks for being here. All right, so let's look at these two fish. The Rummy Nose Rasbora is so cool. And by the way, we've done species profiles on both of these fish. I will put them in the upper right-hand corner as well as in the description below if you want to learn a lot more about how to keep both of these. But the Rummy Nose Rasbora, I think, right away, in my opinion, gets the edge when it comes to the way they look. But it's really just the males that have this awesome look. So you see this fish, it's got that beautiful blue color, and it has the nice orange tips to the dorsal fin and the tail fin, and they are magnificent. The Rummy Nose Tetra, on the other hand, is no slouch either, with that really nice red face and the pattern on the tail. Those are great looking fish as well. But I have to say, for me personally, and I know this is the personal opinion, the Rummy Nose Rasbora just tends to look a little bit nicer. Now, I did mention it's really just the males that look like that. The female Rummy Nose Rasbora, not nearly as nice. It tends to be kind of like a pale green color. So if you want that awesome color, you're going to want male Rummy Nose Rasboras. And luckily, for the most part, that's what the vast majority of fish stores are selling anyway. Now, size-wise, again, you got to be a little bit careful here. Both of these fish could potentially fit in a 20-gallon tank, so that's not going to be an issue. They're both on the smaller side, but the male Rummy Nose Rasbora, Rummy Nose Rasbora in general, is going to stay a little bit smaller, maxing out somewhere around 1.5 inches, where the Rummy Nose Tetra can get quite a bit larger. In fact, they can approach about 2 inches or so. It takes a little bit of time for that to happen, but they do get a little bit on the larger side. The one thing I will say, if you want a fish that is going to have a lot of activity, the Rummy Nose Tetra is going to be a better option out of the two. They just tend to be, they swim a lot more. And by the way, they school a lot more too. And so if you're looking for a fish that's going to be in tighter groups, the Rummy Nose Tetra is definitely the one to consider. Rummy Nose Rasbora, they tend to just kind of explore the tank on their own. And they're very interesting in their own right, but they tend to be a lot more stationary, a lot less swimming, and virtually not a whole lot of schooling behavior, really hardly at all. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, but which one is going to live longer? Which one is going to be easier to keep in terms of their overall health and hardiness? I think this one here is a no-brainer. The Rummy Nose Rasbora for us is a much hardier fish, and we at one point imported thousands of these fish. When they're very small, they can be a little bit touch and go, but usually when you find them at a pet store, if they are approaching 1 inch in size, usually they're beyond their risk time when they're smaller, and they can be a very, very hardy fish. In fact, the Rummy Nose Tetra, I would say, is one of the least hardy fish that we've kept. They are extremely prone to ick, and some of the ick infestations that I've seen, well, the worst ones have been with the Rummy Nose Tetra, and they also really don't like harder water with a higher pH, at least not nearly as much as the Rummy Nose Rasbora does. And so if you've got that water that's approaching 7.5 or close to 8 like we do, Rummy Nose Rasbora is typically going to be a lot better option. And so when it comes to water parameter range, the Rasbora is going to be a better option than the Rummy Nose Tetra. Now, you may be thinking of yourself, well, we want to keep these fish in groups, and that is true for both of them. They want to be in groups of at least 6 or more, but I always recommend, if you really want to see fish in their ultimate behavior and comfort level when they are schooling or shoaling fish, get 8, 10, or 12. That cost can add up quite a bit, and this is where the Rummy Nose Tetra has an advantage, because typically at most pet stores, they're going to be a little bit cheaper, in some cases a lot cheaper, than the Rummy Nose Rasbora, although the prices of the Rummy Nose Rasboras are starting to come down. Now, when you're thinking about breeding these fish, I actually think that the Rummy Nose Rasbora is easier to breed. Like I said, we've brought in thousands and we've sold thousands, and it was very common that we would get people coming back, customers coming back and saying, oh, hey, you know, those Rummy Nose Rasboras I bought from you, they're already starting to have fry, which is really cool. The one downside when it comes to the Rummy Nose Rasbora, like I mentioned earlier, is sometimes it can be a little bit hard to find females, and you wind up with a tank full of males, which obviously aren't going to give you any offspring. But with the Rummy Nose Tetra, Tetra, you have to be somewhat intentional. They are egg scatterers like Tetras are and like barbs. And so you might have to do spawning mops and remove the parents or the fry in order to get them to hatch and in order to get them to survive. Where the Rummy Nose Rasbora doesn't prey on the fry quite as much as the Tetras do. And so when you're thinking about making the choice between the two, I think the hardiness is absolutely a critical factor, in which case I would go with the Rummy Nose Rasbora. And it really comes down to personal preference in terms of the way you want your aquarium to look. If you want a very calm aquarium, if you want that blue color and that orange, then the Rummy Nose Rasbora is going to be a very easy choice. If you want something that's going to school a little bit more, have a little bit more activity, maybe get a little bit larger, the Rummy Nose Tetra would probably be the way to go there. But either fish is a great choice. Now, if it's me and I'm picking between them, I think it's pretty obvious after going through this video, I would choose the Rummy Nose Rasbora. They are actually pretty close to my favorite nano fish, where the Rummy Nose Tetra, I don't tend to keep them as much, like I said, just because I have a harder time keeping them around and keeping them alive. So I would love to hear from you in the comments section below. Which one do you think is better? Which one do you like more? And again, if you haven't kept one or both of these fish, check out the species profiles in the upper and lower right-hand corner. As always, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.